So I think if you or your family can align the interests and gifts and talents that you have with the needs of an organization and do it for a little longer than just a Saturday afternoon, the impact of that can be tremendous.
Welcome to The Lisa Show, where we take a good look at life. Welcome to The Lisa Show. You know, I hate to brag, but this is one of those days. In the spirit of spring cleaning, better late than never, I finally went through that box of random wires and cables that's been sitting in my basement, including technology that existed before some of my kids did. I'm actually being very literal. So that's what I'm proud of today. So if you're throwing anything out for spring cleaning that you are proud of, please comment on social media or message me. I really want to hear about it. Speaking of chores, I just want to say a hello to one of our Instagram followers, Deanne, and she commented about how when she was a kid, she loved crossing off the chores on the list her mom made for Saturday morning chores. And there was one for each kid. She felt like it was a great accomplishment. And the person who got up earliest and got ready for the day, made their bed, got to choose the chore first. I love that idea, Deanne. How fun, to have this great memory of kids and parents doing their chores together. I'm a sucker for a good system, right? So I love a system. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thanks for commenting on the show. Remember, we love our followers. We read every single one of your comments. Okay, diving in. This season on The Lisa Show, we've been talking about doing good better. And today we're talking about how we involve our kids in social impact so that they can be forces for good in the world. Now, we know we got to start them young. So what does that look like? Now, maybe this is just me, but in approaching this topic of teaching kids to love and help their neighbor, there are a few images that come to mind. Grand gestures like taking a big trip to go volunteer or giving up a Christmas. I don't know. You've seen those heartwarming stories. You get it. They're all over social media. They donated all their toys, or they biked across the country and raised awareness, or, whatever. Like really amazing things that some families are out there doing, and I commend them. I want to be one of them. Let me tell you about a memorable experience I had in my own home trying to attempt something of that scale or as close as I could. And please don't hate me for this, but I'm going to cue some Christmas music here just to set the scene. I found myself, like a lot of mothers, in a place where I wanted Christmas to mean something. I wanted this year to be something special, something that brought our family together and really invoked the Christmas spirit. So, of course, I had to ask my friends what I should do. And my friend was telling me about how for their Christmas, they were all giving up presents to each other and gifts to family and friends in order to save money to go on this trip to dig wells in South America. And they were super excited. They told us all about the detail and how meaningful it can be and how the organization has totally been vetted. And it just sounded wonderful. I got really caught up in the idea that this could really bring our family together and really inspire the true meaning of Christmas, where you're not just thinking about yourself, but you're thinking about what you can do for others and bring the family closer together. I mean, win-win. I was so excited that I casually brought up this idea at dinner one night. Now, my kids were a little younger than my friends' kids at the time, and my three oldest were like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. Sure, no big deal. They, to be fair, probably thought I'd forget about it in a few weeks. But my two youngest kids, who were quite younger, were visibly nervous. And I remember my son, Hugh, going, hey, everybody hang on. Just let's think about this. So does that mean no presidents? He wanted us to stop and reconsider this idea that would ruin his idyllic idea of what a childhood Christmas is, right? and waking up in your own home and rushing down to see all the presents under the tree. He was really, really nervous and told us all to think about what we were doing. And it was so visible that the older kids started to tease him because, he showed some weakness, right? So they said to him, "Oh, you just worried about your Legos? You're more worried about your Legos than you are about people who need our help." And he was like, "That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, can't we help other people and still have Christmas?" Suffice to say, things didn't go as I had planned when I had first presented this idea. Like, how about we do everything different on this special, most magical day? And my kids were like, wait a second, let's rethink that. Well, we didn't take a trip to South America to dig wells that Christmas. And when I was sort of lamenting the fact that, my kids aren't super interested in that to my friend, she said, "Well, to be fair, my kids wouldn't have agreed to this when they were your kids' age either. This is something now that we can do when they're older." And that made more sense to me, but I still felt like it was pretty funny. We always still tease my son of like, "Don't worry, you're getting your Legos. It's going to be fine." I don't think that you always have to have an all or nothing view. So how do we get our kids involved in service and social impact? And I promise you, in this episode, there will be something for every parent. Even if your family is in crisis mode, even if you have no time to spare, or if taking on some big project as a family sounds laughable. So let me take you back to the Food and Care Coalition, a homeless resource center in my community that we featured a few times this season. I became familiar with the Food and Care through volunteering, and I've been there a few times with my family and my church youth group, just helping make meals, chopping vegetables, stuff like that. And that's how I got to know Ken Larsen, the chef at Food and Care. And when I say chef, I mean it. He was working at a fancy local restaurant before he came to Food and Care. And Ken is not just reheating frozen food for clients he serves. I do remember very vividly once when I volunteered there, he politely corrected the way I was chopping onions because they needed to be smaller. He has standards. I respect that. And when Ken let me interview him for this series, I got to learn more about what brought Ken to Food and Care and why he has such a personal connection to this place.
My mom was a single mom with 9 kids. She's an immigrant from England. My dad was abusive, so the state came in and told my mom she had to separate from my dad or they were going to take the kids away. So money was tight when we were kids, so I ate at places like this when I was a kid. And then later I got into cooking. I really enjoyed cooking when I interviewed over here. I looked at it a way of trying to give back to the people that helped me when I was younger. But now I've been here, it'll be 17 years in September. So that's why I feel like, especially with the youth, I feel like I really connect with the kids in the dining room just because I was there. I know what they're feeling like when they're eating there and like embarrassed, like one of my friends going to see me and stuff. So I know how those feelings feel. But even though I had those feelings, the volunteers did such a great job of making me feel like I was important and I was special that I wanted to give that to people coming here.
Ken's life experiences motivate him to care deeply about his work and the individual well-being of the clients at Food and Care. And his experiences being on both sides of service have given him a clear philosophy about the people he is serving.
I always tell people, like, life's hard, so if it makes it a lot easier if we work together. So I don't care where you're from. I don't care what language you speak, what gender you are. I want to make your life easier, which I think makes you feel good and it brings everybody up, I feel like we all have our things that make us special. And so I think, like, what makes you different? What makes you special? My mom wasn't a bad person. She just was dealt a bad hand and she did the best she could. And so I've really tried to give people the benefit of the doubt when they come here, or like want to reach out and get to know their story and why they're struggling. I can get to know, and I can maybe learn something from you to help me be a better person.
What creates a person like Ken, a compassionate guy who is using his unique skills to lift his fellow humans? I think we all want our kids to grow up and be like that. But Ken's mom didn't take him on a big service trip to dig wells or build orphanages. You know, a stereotypical grand gesture. She couldn't. That wasn't in the cards. Instead, Ken became interested in giving back because of his own personal experiences, because he had seen firsthand what it was like to need the help of others, and because he wanted to use his skills to give back. And I think this illustrates something important. All of our kids have their own interests and their own experiences, and those interests and experiences will play a huge role in shaping the way that they participate in social impact. For example, seeing their dad in a wheelchair was not something I had planned for my kids, I can promise you that. But it happened, and it has forever shaped what they care about. And now my kids are always going to pay attention to people in wheelchairs, and the needs of people in wheelchairs are always going to matter to them. My point is that for compassionate people, their whole life experience teaches them what causes they'll care about. So our job isn't to tell our kids what issues they ought to care about, so much as to show them the importance of compassion and the skills they need to really make a difference. With that said, I've identified 3 ways that we can teach our kids that lifting our fellow humans through social impact really matters. Our first piece of advice is about leveraging our children's own interests, and it comes from Bethany Brady Spalding, who we also heard from in episode 2. She's a mom in Virginia who has worked on public health and education initiatives around the world. I asked her how she involves her kids in social impact.
I think they find their own unique gifts and their own interest. And, as a mom, I do a lot of work. I coordinate our community outreach for my church. And so I'm always finding ways for young people to get involved. But I think the best way to do it is when it's something that your child or other children really like and really jive with. Right? I mean, just one example, my middle daughter is like a fashionista. She's really, I am not, but she is. And she, just loves all things hip fashion, right? And so helping her find a volunteer opportunity where it's curating clothes for people in need and being really deliberate about using her fashion skills to go through lots of donations and things like that to come up with for families who have been experiencing homelessness or have had domestic violence or other things. But using her love to do something impactful, I think is really important. Like another one of my daughters just loves to teach. She just loves to mentor young people. And so connecting her with a mentoring program for refugee youth in our community. So I think helping kids, not just saying you should do good things, you should do service, you should show, but I think we can be most successful and set them up for the most joy is we identify their gifts and their unique abilities and find an organization or an opportunity where they really jive.
Don't you love how Bethany's daughters participate in social impact in different ways because of their different interests? It kind of reminds me of the social impact roles we talked about in episode 2. Everyone, including our kids, has unique skills and interests, and our kids can use these unique interests in ways that make the world a better place. I especially like this because it makes social impact a little bit more doable and a little less outside our kids' comfort zones. They're able to leverage things they're already good at to help other people. Bethany also told me how she incorporates social impact into her daughter's celebrations and life milestones.
Any kind of celebration, whether it's a birthday or a baptism, or, when our girls turn 12, we do a women's circle where they raise money for a cause that they care about. And I think it's something that's easy to do and fun. I think that's an easy way to incorporate social impact or kind of caring or community building into our lives, into our children's lives, is along these important milestones of their life, inviting them to choose something they care about and how they can get all their neighbors and family members and people to support it.
Once again, the service is based on the needs and wants of the individual kid. They choose what they're interested in and what they care about. And we can empower them to go from just caring about an issue to being able to actually make a difference. Okay, so our first way to help our kids learn the importance of giving back is by leveraging their unique interests and skills. The second way we can help our kids build a relationship with social impact is by leading through consistent example, which creates a family culture of giving back. For Bethany's kids, that looks like lots of invitations to show up and strong encouragement.
Yeah, I think always bringing kids along, whether it's to a garden cleanup day or whether it's my husband and I run a prison ministry, and we have a women's prison in our area that we help women while they're in prison. Actually, tomorrow morning, we get to welcome a woman who's been in prison for 10 and a half years, and we get to be the first people to meet her as she steps out into the world. Having our children engage with us in that journey, whether it's helping do some chores to raise some money to help her buy clothes when she comes out prison. I think with us, with our kids, we are always talking about what we're doing professionally and our other roles with our faith or our school communities. We're always not forcing, but strongly encouraging them to come along for the wild ride and show up and learn and contribute in their own way.
Not only does Bethany provide a variety of meaningful opportunities to contribute outside of the home, but she has a very intentional approach to the important conversations that take place in comfortable and familiar settings, like the dinner table.
I think, dinner table is a vibrant place to talk about social issues and needs and solutions. We've had a practice of in our house showing videos around the dinner table of something inspiring that somebody's doing in the world, like someone who had a great idea to do something really impactful. And we all find different ones and then discuss it. And not that we always replicate it, but just, be inspired to keep having the energy to do good things in our own community. And so I think with children, like you said, your role models, your examples, you talk about what you're doing, you invite them to participate and to go along with you.
In Bethany's words, she's helping her kids engage in their family's journey of social impact. She's creating a family culture in which lifting and improving their community is a priority. It's just what they do. Jill Piacitelli, the Associate Director of the Ballard Center, and another name you may recognize. Remember, I want her to be my best friend. No updates on that, but, stay tuned. Anyway, Jill also told me how her family builds a culture of social impact.
There's a difference between service and social impact, right? So if what your family is interested in and what you're interested in for your kids is service experiences, they can be very transformative and they have their value. But if social impact's what you're looking for, it's almost like a family or an individual legacy, right? You're like, what do we really want this family to do together? What kind of impact, what kind of needle do we want this family to move? And if in a family council or even in a quick discussion, if you can take that kind of slight interest in service and say, if our family was really able to make a difference on something that they cared about, what would that thing be? And again, I think kind of pushing the family to counsel on that is already loving the problem a bit more than just engaging in a solution or service work.
You may have just heard Jill mention loving the problem, an idea we've been exploring since the very beginning of this series. Jill painted a picture for what falling in love with the problem looks like when you do it together as a family.
So an example of this might be that, in my ward right now, there are multiple people who have physical disabilities. Because of my kind of closeness with some of them, I'm starting to realize that the buildings are not super accessible. And the kind of physical infrastructure creates barriers to their social engagement. So if I were to say to my family, that's something that's really weighing on me right now, I wonder if in the next year or 10 years, this is something that we could really focus on and fix in this community, right? If we directed some time and attention and resources to fixing this issue, what would that look like? Well, maybe a step one would be the thing that you do over the holidays, right? Maybe the first thing we would say is go have a conversation with the people experiencing that, find out if that's actually an issue, and if it is, what their hopes would be for changing that system. And then you're kind of like, well, who works on this and how could they use my help? And so if you're having the conversation to say, we're going to work with this organization because we feel like they're solving this problem. So I think if you or your family can align the interests and gifts and talents that you have with the needs of an organization and do it for a little longer than just a Saturday afternoon, the impact of that can be tremendous.
For Jill and her family, it's not about a single day's work, which her kids may or may not remember in a few years. It's about choosing a cause that really matters to her family and giving some real thought to the skills they could apply to the cause, and then investing in that cause long term. And if your kids really couldn't care less, which, we've all been there, then creating a family culture of giving back can look like leading through example. As parents, we're showing our kids what it means to be an adult. And of course, a big part of that, for me at least, is being busy. The needs are never ending. There are always 5 million things to juggle and prioritize, and our kids will see from our behavior what our top priorities are. If lifting other people in our community is a priority to us, our kids will think, oh, that matters. And if reaching out to others is something that always seems to fall through the cracks, well, our kids might not prioritize it either. Now, you might be thinking, my family is in survival mode. I want to raise good kids, but we literally don't have the bandwidth to reach out to other people. We're just trying to keep everyone in our family alive. I think we all find ourselves in that situation at one point or another. I know I have. And that's why I want to go back to Ken's story from the Food and Care Coalition for a moment. Because there's something in his story that is kind of magical. Ken's family was living in crisis when he was growing up. They were just trying to get food on the table. But Ken's mother showed the importance of helping other people by receiving help from the people in their community. Service takes two sides, one to give and one to receive. So while we may be working on helping our kids find their causes and showing them how to engage through our examples, there is one more really important thing we can do to raise social impact-minded kids. That's my third tip. Accept the help of other people. If our families never receive help, how do they know how that impact feels? Because when other people reach out to us in our times of need, those are formative experiences. I want you to meet Nathan Holley. He's a student at Brigham Young University. When he was younger, his parents were in a tough situation and accepted the help of Nathan's grandfather in order to get them through it. Because his parents were willing to accept this help, Nathan's life has been forever changed.
So my grandpa was by far the greatest model of service I've ever had. He changed my life. I lived with my grandpa in kind of a unique situation until I was about 8 years old. Both my parents worked late until the night, and so I spent most of the days with my grandpa. He would pick me up from school. I would be there until 10, 11 at night, and my parents would pick me up. Then I'd be fast asleep. And I'd wake up at my grandparents' house the next morning. I spent a lot of time with him. Me and my older sister would spend most of the days with my grandparents. My grandpa was a caregiver. My grandma was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in her late 50s. And by the time I was 2 years old, she was nonverbal. And my grandpa had begun developing Parkinson's in his early 70s, about the same time that she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so he was losing use of the left side of his body. This is at the same time of taking care of me and my sister, who's about 4 years older than me. And he pushed through it. And he did it with such love, such care. It was the most Christ-like example of love I've ever seen, to have this man sacrifice his life for his wife, for his daughter and her husband, and for me and my sister, to have this example of a kind father, grandfather figure here before me. And that example really shined throughout my life. And later in life, from about age 16 to age 20, I acted as his caretaker. This was after my grandma passed away, and so him and I lived together again until the end of his life. He had lost the use of the right side of his body, and he would have me prepare meals for him, clean his room, and then kind of a bigger task, I helped him sell his home. I ended up remodeling his house and doing a full renovation of the backyard, which had kind of fallen into disarray since my grandmother passed away. And I remember I kept getting praise from, my parents and from neighbors, and it was like, wow, this is such a great thing you're doing. And I didn't know how to take it, because I just knew this is something I not only wanted to do, but something I needed to do. To have such a blessing in my life as my grandpa giving up his life for me, I knew I needed to give as much of my life as I could to him. It was just the most fulfilling thing in my life to be able to say I took care of my grandpa until he passed away. And I feel like in any way I could share that love back to him that he had given me, I knew I had to do it, and I loved it. And it was the most fulfilling experience of my life to be able to do that.
Nathan's story is so beautiful to me. Here was a teenager who could have been self-absorbed and focused on his own problems, as most teenagers tend to do, but he wasn't. Instead, his experience of receiving service and watching his parents receive service motivated him to pay that service forward, or in this case, back to his grandfather. Nathan is a perfect example of how we can help our kids move in a more compassionate and proactive headspace when it comes to impacting the world for the better. We can serve in front of them, and we can show them how to receive help like Nathan's parents did for him. We create a culture of service in our families by taking care of one another, like Nathan's grandpa took care of his wife with Alzheimer's. And then we let our children's own experiences guide their passions for service. Nathan renovated and sold his grandpa's house because it was deeply important to Nathan himself. He found his passion. All our life experiences teach us what we care about, and our kids will have their own life experiences and interests that inform what they care about. But we can help bridge that gap between caring about something and actually getting involved. We can get our kids involved in social impact work by helping them use their unique interests and skills to help others, by creating a family culture of giving back, and by gratefully receiving help when we need it. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about the incredible ripples of good that can happen when we give and receive good in this world. Trust me, we'll have some inspiring stories for you to hear and share with your kids. In the meantime, I hope you've been able to identify a cause that you and your family want to focus on together. Alongside our families, we can make a real impact on our communities and the world while raising kids who care deeply about others.
The Lisa Show is a production of BYU Radio, hosted by Lisa Valentine Clark. This episode was produced by Avery Stonley with help from Becca Hurley, Blake Morse, Erica Price, Kenny Mears, and Michael Combs, with music and post-production by Kip Merrill. For more information about our guests, Jill Piacitelli, Ken Larsen, Bethany Brady Spalding, and Nathan Holley, links to their work will be in our show notes. If you haven't subscribed to The Lisa Show on YouTube, you can find even more content on our channel, including the Council of Moms filmed live in our studio. As always, thanks for your messages. We read them all, and thanks for listening.
Are you turned off by the news because of how angry and depressing it can be, but you still want to engage with important issues? Well, let me introduce you to Top of Mind, another podcast from the BYU Radio family. Each week, the Top of Mind team and award-winning host Julie Rose take one tough topic and they dive deep. The goal is learning to stay open and curious when confronted with perspectives that challenge us. Best of all, every episode will leave you feeling hopeful and empowered to become a better advocate for what matters to you. Top of Mind. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.